Welcome back to Imperium Learning. In this video I'm just going to show you how to estimate the dummy variables. So just looking at this PowerPoint again, you can see I've got this one s t minus 1, let's just call it that. It takes the value 1 if the residual of our gauge model in the previous time period is less than 0. So the question is, how do we create this dummy? Well, all we have to do, I'm going to show you how to code it now. All we have to do is type in sample, which is just spelt in the command box as SMPL, if, and again, we're just going to look at the name of our variable there, garch11res. So we type in garch11res. Now look back at the format, it says takes the value in the previous period, so we have to make sure that we include one lag into it, and we're just going to open a brackets, type in -1 and then close brackets, and just looking again, you can see that if it's below, it takes the value 1 if the residual in the previous period is below 0. So sample if garch11res to the -1 is less than 0, and now we're going to generate a dummy variable. We're going to type in series dummy1 equals 1, and again we're going to type in sample if garch11res to the -1 is more than or equal to 0, then series dummy1 equals 0. So let's just make sure that's okay. Takes the value 1 if it's less than 0. Yeah. So and we could just take a look actually by opening it up, looking at the values and actually comparing it. So if we just line up these, these are the values for my these are the values of my Garch residual series, and these are the values of my first dummy variable, which take the value 1 if the residual series in the previous time period is less than 0. So let's just look here. We've got the 3rd of January 2013 and we got the 4th of January 2013. Now as you can see here, the value of the residual series is below 0. So in other words, for the dummy variable on the 4th of January it should take the value 1, which it does. See that? It takes the value 1 if the Garch residual in the previous time period, so in other words, go up 1 to the 3rd of January 2013, is below 0. And similarly, if it's 0 or above, and you can see that there on the 4th of January 2013, it's above 0. So that means in the next time period, which is the 7th, it should be 0 if it's 0 or above. And as it shows that, we can see that we've programmed it properly, so that's good. We also want to create a second dummy, as you can see here, and let's see what this equals. It's defined as 1 minus our first dummy variable. So in other words, if our dummy variable is 1, and remember, our first dummy variable only takes the values of 1 or 0. If our first dummy variable takes the value of 1, that means our second dummy variable is going to take the value of 0. If our first dummy variable takes the value of 0, then that means our second dummy variable is going to take the value of 1. Okay, so the question then is, how do we program that on Eviews? Well, all you have to do, it's quite simple, is you can type in sample if dummy 1 equals 1, series dummy 2 equals 0. Because if you think about it, 1 minus 1 equals 0. Oh. Hang on. And similarly, sample, if dummy 1 equals 0, then that means series dummy 2 equals 1. And that's because 1 minus 0 equals 1. So you've got our two values here. Let's open that up. Let's just compare it. Just line them up nicely. So as you can see, whenever it's 1 for the first dummy variable, which is there, dummy 1, dummy 2. Whenever dummy 1 takes the value of 1, it should equal 0 for dummy 2, and it does. See that? 4th of January, 4th of January. Whenever that's a 0, that should be a 1, and it is. Whenever that's a 1, that should be a 0, and it is. So it's all well programmed. So now all we have to do is conduct the least squares regression. So we now click on quick, and we click on estimate equation. And all we have to do is type in U2, which is the squared residuals of our Garch11 model, and we type in C for I can't remember. We also have a constant in here, so that's denoted as C. Then we type in dummy 1, because as you can see there's just one term there, dummy 1. Now look at this. It's dummy 1 multiplied by the residual of the Garch11 model in the previous time period. So that would look like this. So we'd open it up. So we've got to times two things together. So we type in dummy 1 multiplied by Garch11 res, open brackets, and put in minus 1. Remember, look at that. The subscript says t minus 1. So we've got to put in that lagged, we got to put in the minus 1 in brackets for the previous time period. And then finally again we're opening up the brackets, putting in dummy 2 time, and again this little asterisk that's above 8, the number 8 on the keyboard, and then you type in Garch11 res minus 1. Make sure you've got two brackets after the minus 1, because that closes the brackets. And then we're just going to get rid of that, like so. I think that's actually okay. Just type it like that. Now I've actually got a print screen of this estimation output on my PowerPoint, so I'm just going to go back to this. And this just tells you some stuff that you can talk about when you're interpreting your estimation output for the Engle and Ung test. So as you can see, the coefficient for our first dummy has a p-value that's significantly below 0.05, so it's significant at the 5% level. This is a strong indicator of sign bias. As you can see, the next two terms for our first and second dummy variables, they're both significant at the 5% level with those p-values. Again, prob just means p-values. So that's a strong indicator of size bias. So because of that, because we seem to have both sign and size bias, then that's a really good reason to start estimating some Garch models which allow for asymmetric volatility in the returns of an asset. So as a result, my next videos will be showing how to estimate an eGarch11 model as well as a GJR Garch11 model. Okay, well I think I'll wrap up there, so goodbye.